Okay, in section 4.4, we're going to be graphing linear equations, but this time we're graphing using slope-intercept form. Up to this point, we've been graphing using a table, but today we're going to start using slope-intercept form, and this actually ends up being a lot easier and more efficient than using a table. So let's look at some of the key ideas over here. The x-intercept and the y-intercept. Those are two words that you need to know coming up within this chapter and in the future. Intercepts. So think of the word intersect. Okay? The x-intercept of a line is the x-coordinate of the point where the line crosses the x-axis. So x-intercept is where the line crosses the x-axis. So look at the x-axis right here. Where does this line cross the x-axis? Right here at this point. So then we look at the y-intercept and we see, where does the y-intercept cross? The y-intercept crosses at this point. So the y-intercept is that point right there, B, and the x-intercept is A. And we'll talk more about that, but think of x-intercept crosses the x-axis, y-intercept crosses the y-axis. Okay, then we also, big important part right here, box this in, circle it, something, slope-intercept form. A linear equation written in the form y equals mx plus b is the slope-intercept form. The slope of the line is m, and the y-intercept of the line is b. So y equals mx plus b is slope and y-intercept. And tomorrow we're going to watch a video, and they're going to say, what does y equal? And you're going to know, you're going to fill it in, mx plus b. Okay, so why don't you write this down? Right here, write down the slope-intercept form, write down that m is the slope, and that b is the y-intercept. Okay, let's move on then. Scrolling down, and let's look at example 1. So when we try to identify the slope and the y-intercept, I want you to take a minute and write down the equation y equals mx plus b. We're going to write that a lot. So we need to look at the equation that we have in number 1, y equals negative 4x minus 2, and look at the y equals mx plus b. So maybe right above it, write down y equals mx plus b. So we want to identify the slope and the y-intercept. So what does m equal? So looking here, what took the place of m? What's the number in front of the x? What's the coefficient? We call that the coefficient. So what's in front of the x? That negative 4. So m is negative 4. And that is our slope. So remember that m is the slope. Okay, and then what is b? So b, if you remember, is the y-intercept. So look at what takes the place of b in our equation. So it's mx plus b. Well, in this case, we're going to say that that's negative 2. So b is negative 2. If it was plus 2, it would be positive 2. Since it's minus 2, we're going to say it's negative 2. Because remember, plus and negative is the same as minus. Okay, so let's go on to number 2. In this case, is this in the form y equals mx plus b? Because I can't identify the m and the b until I have it in that form. Well, here's my equal sign. What's the problem? Remember, it has to be in what does y equal? It's not there yet. So the first thing that we need to do is get rid of the minus 5. So let's put plus 5 to both sides. Get rid of that. Y equals 3 halves x plus 5. Okay, so now we can identify, since it's in y equals form, mx plus b. So in this case, my m is 3 over 2, and my b is 5. So remember, the m is the slope, and the b is the y-intercept of 5. So let's go down to number 3. Y equals x plus 4. What does y equal? X plus 4. So if we're thinking, if we write underneath it, what's mx plus b, what took the place of m? Well, what's the coefficient? We call that the coefficient. What's the number in front of the x? If you don't see the number there, we're not writing it, but there's still a 1 in there. So maybe go ahead and put a 1 in there. So the slope is really 1, And sometimes in slope, we're going to say that that's really 1 over 1. Because if you remember with slope, we've talked about is the rise over the run. So sometimes we will write it in fraction form in order to graph it. But here the slope is 1. What is b, the y-intercept? This number behind here, plus 4. So b equals 4. Going to number 4, y equals 3x. So let's write down y equals mx plus b. So we want to identify the slope and the y-intercept. So I'm going to write underneath m equals and b equals. Those are my two answers that I want to find. So looking up here, y equals 3x. So remember the m is the number, the coefficient in front of the x term. So m is 3. What is b? Look, in my equation, I don't see anything out there. So what's there? If there's nothing there, what was it? Plus what? If it was plus 1, that would show up. It says plus b plus 0. So b is 0. Okay, so if you don't see a plus anything on the end, or plus or minus anything, then the b is 0. So that means it passes through. So this one would pass through the origin because the y-intercept is 0. Okay, let's scroll down then to on your own. So on your own, the same directions, find the slope and the y-intercept of the graph of the equation. So remember, write down, right above here, y equals mx plus b. Whoops, y equals mx plus b. And then you're going to write underneath there m equals and b equals. Write that down. And then on this one, remember first it has to be in y equals form. Does this one say y equals? Nope, so be careful, put it in y equals mx plus b form first. Underneath here, write m equals b equals. Okay, let's pause that and do those two problems. And then let's move on to the next part, example 2. Graphing a linear equation in slope-intercept form. So on this is the fun part. We first look at y equals mx plus b, identify the x-intercept. So those are the two parts. We have to do this first. Okay, so y equals mx plus b. Whoops, I have no idea what just happened. Just a minute. Okay, here goes. So we're going to do the same thing. Step 1, find the slope and the y-intercept. So the first thing we do is look up at this equation, y equals mx plus b. What is m? Negative 3. Okay, I'm going to remember, I need to write over here, rise over run. That is your slope. And so I'm going to ask you to write that down. So if I look at this, the rise is negative 3. Over what? What is negative 3 over? 1. So go ahead and put that as the ratio. Negative 3 over 1. Okay, and then b. What is b? Y equals mx plus b. So b is 3. So once you find those two things, then you, number 2, plot your y-intercept. This is the y-intercept, so I'm going to label it next to it. So I plot that. Y-intercept is 3, I go over here, here's my y-axis. So I go to 3 and I put a dot. Now, I need more points in order to draw my line. So step 3, use the slope to find other points and draw a line. What does that slope of negative 3 tell me? So it's telling me I rise negative 3. Well, what does rising? That means you go down negative 3. So I count from my b, right here, my y-intercept, 1, 2, 3, and I run out to the right, because it's positive 1, and then I'm going to do that again, because I can draw a line between 2 points, but I want it to be more accurate and see more points. So I'm going to go do that again, 1, 2, 3, and run out. Okay, then you're going to draw a straight line, so use a straight edge, unlike me right now on this, and draw a straight line, and then you can predict other points that it will go through. Okay, step 4, it actually asks, if you look up to the top here, it said identify the x-intercept. So where does this line cross the x-axis? So if I look over here, here's my x-axis, where does it cross? At what point? So the x-intercept is 1, so 1 comma 0 at that point. Okay, going back just to look at an overall view of this, in the original thing I said that the slope was negative 3. Does this line look like it has a negative slope? Yes, and it's kind of steep with a slope of -3, so that's good. So questions, think about that. We'll do some more, so let's scroll on down to another one, example of graphing. Now in this one, it's an application problem. The cost y in dollars of taking a taxi x miles is y equals 2.5 x plus 2. Notice we're just using the first quadrant. Why? Well, because in this case, I would never go negative miles. So let's label our x and y axis with this is miles. And this is the cost in dollars. Okay, so what do? I go back up to the problem before, look up to the top of your paper, and step number 1 said to find the slope in the y-intercept. So my m equals, what is my slope based on this line, this equation that they gave me? This is my m. M is the number in front of the x, the coefficient 2.5. This is the rise over the run. So what is the ratio? What's the number underneath? 1. So it's 2.5 rise and then run out 1. Let's look for b. Remember, we have to find two things on number 1, step 1. b is 2. Once I have those two things, look at step 2. So go back up to the problem before and look at step 2. It says plot the y-intercept. So I'm going to plot b equals 2, because that's my y-intercept. So I go to the y-axis, I look for 2, 1, 2, and I put a dot. Step 3, now I use the slope. So use 2.5 over 1 to plot more points. So this is your rise over your run. So from here, I'm going to rise a positive 1, 2.5, and go to the right 1. Okay, I'm going to do that again. Okay, this is 1, 2.5 over 1. Let's try that a different way. I could do the half and then 1, 2, and then go over 1. If you can think back, that's kind of like those slope triangles you made, but we're using the slope triangles to draw it now. We're stair-stepping. Now you draw a line to connect your points using a straight edge, the piece of your paper, a ruler. And we look up in number 4. It says, we look at the line first. Let's look at the line and say, okay, this was supposed to have a positive slope. Yes, it does. Okay, and then step 4 would be to locate the x-intercept. There is no x-intercept in this one. So then part B, it says, interpret the y-intercept and the slope. So this is kind of making sense of the problem. So what does the y-intercept in this case mean? So the y-intercept here, if we look at it where it intersects the y-axis, the y-axis is representing the cost. So the cost at 0 miles is $2. Well, what does that mean? Really, it just means that the initial charge or the initial fee is $2. Initial fee is $2. So no matter how many miles you drive, they're going to charge you a fee of $2. Okay, then the question says, what does the slope mean? So the slope is 2.5 over 1. So looking up here, 2.5 is the cost. So the rise over the run, the y value. So that means the slope says that the cost increases $2.50 for every 1 mile that you go. Okay, if you have any questions, ask them tomorrow. Okay, let's go to on your own then, graphing the linear equations right here. Graph the linear equation, identify the x-intercept. So you need to go through, start just like we did before, look at your y equals mx plus b, write that down. Identify the m, so what's the number, the coefficient in front of the x is 1. What's the b? The b is -4. So go back to your steps. Step 1, look at this, go over, plot. So the first thing that you plot is the b, -4. So go here, plot -4, the y-intercept. Right next to this, y-intercept. Okay, the slope, this is 1 over 1, rise over run. Okay, so go ahead then. From this point, Rise up, 1, run out.